Hey everybody, it's Dr. Dost. Welcome back to my channel, Biblical Languages and Literature. And in this video, we're going to be looking at Daniel 1:6, doing a textual analysis of the Hebrew. But in addition to that, we're going to be looking at the Leningrad Codex, taking a look at some more difficult Masoretic notes. And if you don't know what the Masorah is, or you don't know what I mean by Masoretic notes, I encourage you to stick around, because it is an ancient tradition, ancient notations that are there in the medieval manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible that not only aid in our own interpretation of the Bible, but give us a window into the historical interpretation of the Bible. And so we will be talking about that. We'll probably look at some accent patterns as well, that kind of thing. And you know the drill. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please be sure to do so. Click the bell to be notified when I publish additional videos in this series, and be sure to hit that like button. And I would also encourage you to share this and other videos on your social media accounts so that we can grow the number of followers here. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're in Daniel 1:6, and let's read the text. Vayihi vahem mibnei Yehuda Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, ve'Azariah. Vayihi vahem mibnei Yehuda Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, ve'Azariah. Vayihi vahem mibnei Yehuda Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, ve'Azariah. Okay, so Vayihi we've seen before, and different ways to translate it. Hyper literal or very wooden translations will say "and it was." I would go with something more like "now it happened." I think that's a more fluid translation, in context. But either way, the form is a third masculine singular, vav consecutive. So the yud prefix is the marker of the third masculine singular. Notice that it does not have a dagesh in it like we have in a lot of vav consecutives. If you look down at Daniel 1:7 for a minute, there's another vav consecutive there at the beginning of that verse, vayasem, and it has the vav, it has the patach, and it also has a dagesh in the yud. Why is there no dagesh in the yud in Vayihi? And that's because of the shva underneath. Okay, so Vayihi, this form is apocryphated. The way you would locate the root in a lexicon is Hey Yud Hey. Historically, it's technically Hey Yud Yud, but that's for another time. So Hey Yud Hey is how we would look it up. And final Hey verbs in the kal, or the G stem, however you want to call it, are apocryphated in the vav consecutive. So that means the ending gets chopped off, the hey disappears. And so that's why of the three, root letters that under which this verb is listed in the lexicon, the final hey disappears. We have to remember that the hey at the end is not really a consonant. It's a vowel marker. And we'll get into that some other time. So technically the consonants in this root are just hey and yud. And we know that by looking at Arabic as well. Arabic deals with this the same way. You look at Aramaic, and maybe sometime we'll do a comparison of this and similar verbs in Aramaic and Arabic alongside the Hebrew. But anyways, in Hebrew, it's an apocryphated form. The hey disappears from a writing perspective. So Vayihi vahem. Now, there was, or there were among them, we could say, and even though Vayihi is technically a singular verb, we find in Hebrew and in other languages as well, you'll see this sort of thing in Arabic as well, where the verb may be in the singular, but it refers to, a plural subject. So, now there were among them, vahem, preposition beit, right, with which means among, and then hem is a third masculine plural suffix conjugation. There's no dagesh in the beit because of the preceding vowel, right? Vayehi vahem, vayehi vahem. Mibnei Yehuda, from the children of Judah. Mibnei Yehuda, from. So the preposition min, the nun has assimilated into the beit, right? So instead of min b'nei, we get mibnei, mibnei. From the children of. B'nei, of course, is a masculine plural construct, right? The children of, the sons of. Yehuda, Judah, Yehuda, Judah. And then we get the names listed. Daniel, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Mishael, Va'azariah, and Azariah. So Daniel, Hananiah, we typically say in English, Mishael, and Azariah. And notice that the Vav in Va'azariah gets the short A vowel, patach, under the influence of the composite schwa underneath the ayin. And ayin, of course, takes the composite schwa, not a simple schwa. And if you speak some Arabic, you can understand why, because even though you're taught in biblical Hebrew that ayin is a silent consonant, historically speaking, that was not true at all, actually. And we know that for a number of reasons by reading Greek transcriptions of the Hebrew Bible with place names, right? So the name for Gaza, for instance, begins with ayin in Hebrew, but for some reason it's translated with a gamma, what we would call the letter G in Greek. That tells you something about how ayin was pronounced during that period. But even in modern Arabic, the letter ayin is very much pronounced, and it's a glottal, it's a throat sound. Some people refer to it, some Arabic teachers refer to it as the choking letter. And it's essentially impossible to make that consonant, to pronounce the consonant like that, without having some sort of A vowel come through. And so we know from the vocalization that at some point that ayin was indeed pronounced. Otherwise, there's no way to explain the vocalization in Hebrew of why you would have a composite A schwa, or a composite schwa with the A type underneath the letter ayin. All right, so we're getting kind of technical here. So if you didn't understand that, don't worry about it. I'll explain it in more detail some other time. For those of you whose Hebrew is a little bit more advanced, then you can run with that. And I would refer you, for example, you could look at Masorah Oka's grammar or something like that. And I would imagine that Masorah Oka will deal with these issues. I know he regularly refers to Arabic in there. Anywho, all right, let's take a look at the accent patterns here. Okay, so we've actually seen pretty regularly, I think, all of the accents or the cantillation marks that are in this verse. All right, so let's have a look at them. So first I want to identify just the disjunctive accents, Remember that cantillation marks or accent marks are broken up into conjunctive and disjunctive. And so let's have a look at these accents. Okay, so first, underneath vahem, we have our first disjunctive accent, and that is tifcha. Okay, vahem, tifcha. That's a disjunctive. And the tifcha regularly appears before atnach or siluk, right, which are going to be the halfway point, so to speak, and the end point. And so we have a tifcha, which precedes the next disjunctive accent, which occurs on Yehuda, and that's the atnach, Yehuda. So vahem has the disjunctive accent tifcha, and Yehuda has the disjunctive accent atnach. Then you get the next disjunctive accent on Hananiah, which is the zakef katan. It looks like a schwa above the yud. Then you get another one on Mishael, which is the tifcha again. And that, of course, precedes the siluk, which is the vertical stroke to the left of the A vowel, the kamatz, underneath the letter yud. Okay? So now, the first disjunctive accent on vahem is preceded by vayehi, which has the conjunctive accent mercha. And that's a very common pattern. We'll see the mercha tifcha pattern occurring regularly. And so you can kind of bracket these words together when you're reading. Vayehi vahem. Now there was among them. Okay, that goes together. That's a complete phrase there. Now there was among them. Okay, and let's look at that accent pattern. So the mercha tifcha in the Hebrew Bible. So we're going to do a search here. Okay, and so we see it first in Genesis 1:1 actually. So et hashamayim. So we have the definite direct object marker with hashamayim, with heavens. So mercha tifcha. And then notice it's followed by mercha siluk, right, on ve'et haaretz. We get it in Genesis 1:3 with vayomer Elohim, and God said, vayomer Elohim. We see it in Genesis 1:4 with between the light, ben haor. So God distinguished or divided up between the light and the darkness, ben haor, mercha tifcha. And then you get that same pattern with mercha siluk right after it, just like we had in Genesis 1:1. So this accent pattern that ends Genesis 1:4 is the same pattern that ends Genesis 1:1. So it's really helpful to be able to identify these accent patterns here because they recur regularly. Now we also see it on and there was evening and there was morning. Vayhi erev, vayhi voker. So vayhi erev is considered as one word from a Masoretic perspective because of the makef, and it has the atnach. It has the mercha, and it's followed by vayhi voker, which has the tifcha. And we see one more in Genesis 1:6. So this is a regular pattern just within the first few verses of Genesis. We actually see this pattern twice in Genesis 6 with Yehi Rakia. Let there be a firmament, Yehi Rakia. And we also see it on Ben Mayim. Ben Mayim Lamayim is, between the waters, from between the waters, or separate waters from waters, depending on how you want to translate that. Anyways, this pattern occurs regularly. We see it all over the place. So, mercha tifcha. Okay, the next one we see in Daniel 1:6 is the munach atnach. Munach atnach. And then this pattern shows up right in Genesis 1:1 on bara Elohim. God created, bara Elohim. Genesis 1:2 on al pnei tehom, on the face of the water, al pnei tehom. Genesis 1:3, yihi or. Genesis 1:5, kara laila, and so on and so forth. All right, now this pattern of munach atnach shows up in Daniel 1:1 on Yehoyakim melech Yehuda, right? Melech Yehuda being one word, essentially because of the makef. Yehoyakim melech Yehuda. We see it in Beit Elohav in Daniel 1:2, Beit Elohav. Daniel 1:3 has Rav Sarisav, the chief official, or as some say, the chief eunuch. You get it in Daniel 1:4 at Behechal HaMelech, in the palace of the king, Behechal HaMelech. On Shanim Shalosh for Daniel 1:5. And then here again in 1:6. Now the pattern of accents that we see in Daniel 1:6 on the first four words, mercha tifcha, munach atnach, occur for the first time in the Bible in Genesis 1:3 on vayomer Elohim yihi or. And God said, let there be light. Vayomer Elohim yihi or. And then we get it again in Genesis 1:6 on yihi rakia b'toch hamayim. Let there be a firmament in the midst of the water. Then the next one is in Genesis 1:10 Ulemikveh hamayim kara yamim. Ulemikveh hamayim kara yamim. Which is going to mean, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And the gathering of the waters he called seas. So you can see in these verses here that when you encounter this accent pattern, the words are tightly bound together syntactically. And so by being able to quickly identify accent or cantillation patterns in the Hebrew Bible, you can, with your eyes, even if you don't know the meaning of certain words, you can group them into sensible units because the Masoretes have kind of done the work for us. Now, the first time this pattern occurs in the book of Daniel is in Daniel 1:2. Vayviem Eretz Shinar Beit Elohav, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, to the house of his God, Beit Elohav. And then we have it again here in Daniel 1:6. And just to give you a heads up, the next time we see this, where all four accents occur in this order, Daniel 1:12. So be on the lookout for that. All right, now next we get Munach Zakef Katan. Munach Zakef Katan. So the first time we see that in Genesis is on the phrase Veruach Elohim, and the wind of God, the Spirit of God, however you want to translate that, Veruach Elohim. We see it again in Genesis 1:4, on Vayavdel Elohim, and God divided. We see it in Genesis 1:6, on Vayomer Elohim. We see it again in Genesis 1:6. Let's scroll down here, right? On Vayihi Mavdil, Vayihi Mavdil. And let there be a division, and so on and so forth. Now, in fact, we see this pattern right in the first verse of Daniel, Bishnat Shalosh, in the third year, Bishnat Shalosh. And we see it in Daniel 1:2, on Klei Veta Elohim, right? Klei has Munach, Veta Elohim, which is, from a Masoretic perspective, one word. Okay, the vessels of the temple, the vessels of the house of God. And you can see here that it shows up in Daniel 1:3, Vayomer HaMelech. We see it in Daniel 1:4, on Umevine Mada, as well as Koach Bahem, on Daniel Hananiah. Daniel Hananiah. On Daniel Hananiah, and then Tifcha Va'azariah on Mishael and Azariah. So let's look for the accent pattern on the last four words now. The first time this accent pattern occurs uninterrupted at the end of a verse is in Genesis 1:16 on Lememshelet Halayla Ve'et HaKochavim. So for the ruling of the night and the stars. So obviously that is bound to material beforehand. And then we get it next in Genesis 2:5, Ve'adam ayin la'avod et ha'adama. And there was no man to work the ground. Ve'adam ayin, and there was no man, la'avod et ha'adama. Now we're going to see this exact same accent pattern at the end of Daniel 1:11 on Al Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Ve'azariah. Okay, now, we haven't done any Masorah for a while, so I want to take just a few minutes to look at a Masoretic list that we did not pay attention to before. Now, back in Daniel 1:4, we encountered the Karei Ketiv with mum, right? Yiladim asher ein bahem kol mum. And we said that in brackets here, that is the Karei. Now notice that the aleph in the Karei is omitted. Well, there's a Masoretic note on this that I want to look at. Okay, so here we are in the Leningrad Codex, and I just want to go over to a related Masoretic note in the book of Numbers. Now the first word of Numbers 11:4, you can see here before you,
והספסוף,
which in the King James is translated as a mixed multitude, the mixed multitude. And modern translations tend to use the word rabble. But you will notice that there is no vowel here underneath the aleph. Now, in Masoretic tradition, every consonant essentially needs to have a vowel. There's no vowel here. So the aleph is clearly not to be pronounced. Now, the Masoretes deal with this in a Masoretic list for 11.4. So if we go back to the manuscript, okay, here's Numbers 11.1. And if we just scroll down a little bit, we come to the word under consideration here.
והספסוף, והספסוף.
And as we can see, there is no vowel. What appears to be a short A vowel here actually is a completely different note. That's the Rafeh mark, which belongs to the Tav. So we can see in the manuscript, there is no vowel for the aleph. And indeed, if we look at the Masorah Parva here, it says one time, right? So the lamed means leta, Aramaic, there is not. And it is written with aleph. So it is written with aleph, but the aleph is not read. Now, if we go down to the Masorah Magna at the bottom of the page, this Masorah Magna list, what we're going to see here is a long note that says 48 times, mem is 40, chet is 8, so 48 times, ketiv aleph, written with aleph, velo kri, and not read. Written with aleph and not read. That occurs 48 times in the Bible. And after this, you will see a bunch of catchwords and catchphrases which identify the book, chapter, and verse of all of the locations of these. And so to make it a little easier on you, we'll go over to the Dotan Reich Thesaurus here. And you can see it, much easier to read than the manuscript, right? So there you go. By the way, when you use this tool, the double paragraph line means Masorah Magna. Masorah Magna. So that means there's a Masorah Magna list here. And so, well, what are the instances? Well, the first one that's listed here comes from Shmot, which is Exodus. Exodus 8:7. Exodus 8:7. The second one is the one under consideration, Numbers 11:4. And then Bamidbar, Numbers 11, Yud Aleph, Kaf He, 25, Numbers 11:25. Okay, all different words, but you'll notice that all of these words have an aleph, and if you go to the manuscript and read them, you will notice that there will be no vowel for them. They're not to be read. And so as we go down, here we are, we're in Jeremiah. And we scroll down and we come to number 45, and it's Daniel and the form mum. Okay, and so this word is included in a list of 48 words in which aleph is written but not read. All right, well, I think that is sufficient for today. We'll pick up next time with more textual analysis, more Masorah, more cantillation marks. And if there's anything that you'd like to see me include in here, maybe we could start including some attention to other translations like the Septuagint and so on. I'd be happy to do that. I want to make this, the videos in this playlist, something that is useful to the people who are actually watching it. So if you want me to modify the presentations in any way, please let me know. All right, we'll see you next time, everybody.